Our first guest tonight has gone from university dropout to one of the most successful young people in the country. Stephen Bartlett is an entrepreneur, author and public speaker. Leaving university after one lecture, he then co-founded the innovative social media marketing agency Social Chain, which catapulted him into fame and fortune. Since leaving the company, he's gone on to host the hugely popular podcast Diary of a CEO, as well as release his first book, and he's just made history, becoming the youngest ever dragon on Dragon's Den. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stephen Bartlett! Thank you so much for coming on the show.
This is legit. This is much better than my kitchen.
Yes.
Should we explain?
We should explain that. Like, I recently did your podcast, Diary of a CEO, and normally podcasts take place in the studio. But Stephen's was in his kitchen.
Yeah. And it wasn't as fancy as this, but you were amazing.
I really enjoyed it, but what I must say, I wasn't expecting it. We have... You know when you have a conversation with somebody, it feels like the chat we had, where it felt like it was a chat down the pub. We started off talking about football, and then 2 hours later, I was crying, telling you about my granddad. and I was kind of walking away from it going, how did he kind of unravel that from me? And is that a skill that you've learnt, or do you have a natural ability to interview someone? Absolutely
not. I still find it deeply baffling when people describe me as an interviewer.
Right.
This week, it's increasing in terms of velocity, the amount of times people describe me as an interviewer, and I'm like, that's such a strange... I never intended to be an interviewer. For me, I'm genuinely, like, nosy. I'm like nosy, and like I'm curious about the stuff below. I've built my business off social media, and we deal, you know, social media, Instagram. It's all surface level. The reason I started the podcast and the reason the word diary is in there is because I want to get the level below. So really, for me, it's about getting people on the podcast that you're genuinely curious about, and then asking them questions that you genuinely care about. So you didn't see this, but in terms of my notes, there's no questions there. So based on what you say, all I have to do is say why. And then you give me the answer and I go, yeah, but why? And then you give me the answer and then they're crying. It's like, because you reach the level below.
You sneaky fucker. Because you had like a note in front of me, so you were looking at nothing.
Doodles.
Genius. I love that. So do you have like a dream guest that you think, oh, that's the person I'd like most?
In terms of guests that I'd love to have on, I really want to get Lewis Hamilton on. I really want to get, after all he's done recently, especially the messages he's pushed forward in Saudi Arabia. And then it's, you know, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama. I'd love them both at the same time. I saw this tweet the other day about...
This is it. Well, that's because this is a comedy show. and you meant intellectually at the same time. They had, you know what I mean? They had a very different images. But, you know, yes, we can.
Exactly.
But your backstory itself is fascinating because super successful guy, you had your own business, Social Chain. I didn't realise that you just did one lecture at university and decided you had to kind of quit. And you kind of started your sort of business ambition with no money, just kind of on the bare bones. It's fascinating.
It was the same in school. I didn't last long in school. I got expelled in the end of school. And my whole life, I've been It's so funny because people describe it as bravery. They look at those moments and go, oh, you're so brave in hindsight. But for me, and this is maybe a bug in my brain, I think bravery is staying in a situation you know is not serving you, that is sucking the life and joy out of you. I think that's bravery. If we can all agree being, you know, like, for me, like, so, you're very kind. You're very kind. But if we can all agree the objective of our lives is to be happy, that's the North Star, that's the biscuit we're all aiming for, then sticking in a situation you know is making you unhappy, that's courage. If something's making you miserable versus it's making you difficult, for me, difficulty is a sign of a growth moment. For me, misery is a sign of you can't stay in that state for a long time without compromising something irreversible. So I think much of our lives is constrained by a miscalculation of what the true risk is. We go through life thinking that the risk is uncertainty. No, the risk is certain misery. That's the thing to be terrified of. And I've always been terrified of that. So regardless of whether I have a plan B or it figured out, which I did not at any step in my life, I would much rather choose uncertainty rather than certain misery.
But for people that don't know, what was the business? What was Social Chain?
Yeah, so I started, 18 years old, dropped out of university, started a student notice board online, tried to figure out how to get people to come to the website. Flyers and posters don't work, apparently. It was 2013. Tried social media channels, realized they did really work. Started building in 2013 huge communities around interests like sports and food and dancing or whatever on all of these social platforms at a time when people didn't believe in them. Got to about 100 million followers. We were doing 7 billion video views a month on social media. Turned that into a media company, which was one of the biggest in the world at the time. Then it became a marketing agency, and we did the marketing for Coca-Cola, Uber, Amazon, the biggest brands in the world, helping them understand social media. And then it became an e-commerce company, which is really the bulk of the business now, where we sell our own products using our audience and our marketing expertise. And then we took the company public on the stock market in 2019, and then I quit.
Most people couldn't necessarily walk away from something that was successful and making that amount of money.
Well, I remember the day I was in Manchester, and I remember this was the day, August 19th, my company was going public on the stock market. And when your company goes public on the stock market, really as a founder, it's the first time you can like sell the shares and it's the first time you can actually cash in. And I woke up that morning in the hotel in Manchester, looked at my phone, there it was, Social Chain, worth, at the time, 300 million on the stock market. I did the math, I was like, that gives me X tens of millions. I remember being 18 years old in Moss Side in Manchester, stealing Chicago Town pizzas when I dropped out of university to feed myself. And I remember finding £13 behind a takeaway chair. I'd gone into this takeaway, I was super skint. I thought, oh my God, there's a pound coin. And so I just went around all of the tables and I found 13 quid. Euphoria, right? Absolute euphoria. The day that I figured out I was worth X tens of millions, total anticlimax, like the verge of slight depression. And I called my business partner, he was the same.
Wow.
And it's this phenomenon I've noticed on the podcast as well with all of my guests. The reason I wanted money was because we didn't have any when I was growing up. We didn't go on holidays, we didn't have Christmases, birthdays. My family lived on the verge of bankruptcy pretty much my whole childhood. So in my insecure brain, I thought that money was going to be this liberating, happiness-inducing moment, like where the confetti would rain down and the marching band would come out, and it wasn't. It's that moment where you realise that you had been chasing a rainbow, you get to the end of it, you grab, and it's gone. And then you think, well, so what was the point? And what is the point? And then I had to go on the journey of figuring out, what was actually driving me.
So what was driving you?
Insecurity. Like, people don't talk about it. It's one of the most unbelievable motivators. There's something I write about in my book where I say, the thing that invalidated you when you were younger is the thing you will desperately seek validation from as an adult. And for me, that was money and fitting in. And so that's what I think drove me a lot. And once you get it, you've got to find something else.
So what drives you now, then?
So I think the thing that makes me happiest and most fulfilled is creating content and that makes people feel and think better. And better is a subjective term that you can just decide for yourself.
So, but on that note, your podcast is now a live show, isn't it?
Yes.
And it doesn't sound like the sort of run-of-the-mill live show that kind of businessmen might do.
Yeah.
Because you explained it to me, and listen to this, it sounds pretty epic.
So I love theatre. I love Hamilton, I love music, I love choir. So when we announced we're doing a live podcast, I wanted to blend together all of the influences of my life. Like 1,000 people, sold out our first one in Manchester. People genuinely thought they were coming to me with a microphone on stage doing a podcast. They got there, there's like a 30, 40 person black gospel choir, things exploding from the roof, like a screen there telling a story. There's like cryptic messages all over. They are frozen to their fucking chairs. They're like, what?
I love the idea they just sat there with a notepad going, I was just going to ask him a question.
Literally. People brought notepads as if it was going to be like a seminar or something. We caught them off guard. I could see the front row crying. I was crying again, fuck's sake. My business partner's crying. It was like a musical, motivational, I don't know, experience. And super vulnerable, super raw. So.
And you're doing a bunch of them now, aren't they? Are they in London?
Yeah, we've done doing 2 nights at the Palladium, which is sold out in London. We're doing Glasgow, Newcastle, Birmingham, and maybe another night in Manchester. But we're taking it up and down the country.
I'm
So
definitely
super
coming along.
excited.
I really want to see that.
Yeah, you're invited.
I'm looking forward to it. Now, we have to talk about Dragon's Den as well.
Yes, I can actually give you an exclusive today.
Oh,
I found out backstage.
Yeah.
So people have been asking when it airs. It airs on January 6th.
Right.
Which is the air date, and I'm super excited because I think it's going to be a different type of Dragon's Den.
Oh, in what respect?
Well, I've watched the show since I was 12, right? So I've been, which by the way is crazy to sit next to Peter Jones and Deborah after you've been watching them since you're 12.
Right.
But it's just a different perspective on the world, right? So I come from a social media, digital tech background. I'm, you know, a 20-something. And so that's the perspective I push forward on the show. For once, businesses are being interrogated on their TikTok credentials. Do you know what I mean? You've probably never seen that before.
Yeah.
The word Instagram appears more times in the show, probably in that episode, than ever in the entirety of the season. It's a real, and we battle.
Yeah.
We battle.
Amazing. Incredible interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up
Thank
for
you.
fantastic Stephen Bartlett.